This is the third adaptation of Death on the Nile that I've seen, and it's my third favorite.
So let's jump into Death on the Nile first. Death on the Nile is based on Agatha Christie's novel, and if you've seen my video on writers who have sold the most books, which is, by the way, on my other YouTube channel, but if you've seen that video, then you know that Agatha Christie is number 2 on the bestsellers of all time list.
Wow.
She is right behind Shakespeare, and like basically they're neck and neck for being the most sold of all time. So the source material here was at one time extremely popular, if not still extremely popular. In this film, Kenneth Branagh directed the film and also stars as Hercule Poirot, Agatha Christie's French protagonist, who's notorious for solving all of the mysteries that she puts him in. And he also directed the prior film in this series, which was Murder on the Orient Express. And both films had very popular celebrities involved, which we'll probably get into a little bit in our discussion here. But I will say that this movie has really struggled a lot. It was supposed to come out during the height of the pandemic in 2020, I believe, and was actually delayed several times. And then it got hit by the whole Army Hammer controversy. He got sort of like a Me Too / cannibal vibe going, and it was just all of a sudden tanked that aspect of the movie. And he plays one of the lead characters here. So all that to say, the movie has not done well. And I don't actually think it has turned a profit yet, unless there's some HBOMax earnings that they didn't publish, which is sort of interesting. It's sort of interesting. So my first question for you, Mike, with all of that background going into this film is, what did you think of this film? What did you think of Death on the Nile?
Well, just preface it a little bit by saying that I am a big Agatha Christie adaptation fan. I've actually never read any of her books, which is something that I mean to do at some point. I'm just afraid that if I start, that'll take the rest of my life. And I think we've already discussed that I'm pretty busy as it is. But I've seen many adaptations of her work, and including most of the Poirot stories. So this is the third adaptation of Death on the Nile that I've seen, and it's my third favorite.
The other two, there's one from 1978, right? There's one
from 1978 with Peter Ustinov.
Okay,
and then David Suchet did a run of playing Hercule Poirot on television. And he did, there are, I believe, 33 novels and 50 stories. And he did almost like 99% of them.
Yeah. Now he's the guy. So my dad is a huge Hercule Poirot fan. I can't say that name, by the way.
I know it is difficult for me as well.
It is so tough. But my dad's a huge fan. So we used to watch those as kids. And I'm pretty sure that's the guy that has maybe more. I hope I don't offend anybody by describing him this way, but he's sort of more like a pudgier faced version with a little black mustache.
Yes.
Yes. He's phenomenal as Poirot.
Is. Absolutely. And I mean, I think he has set the bar really for that character, if for no other reason, because he's done it like more than anybody else by a long shot. I think Peter Ustinov did about 8 films or something like that, but and other actors have played him on occasion, but and this story for some reason is one of the most popular Poirot mysteries. I think Murder on the Orient Express is probably the better known one, and in my opinion, it's the better written one. It's the more interesting mystery. This one's pretty much by the book in terms of your standard whodunits. It's shot, when it's shot well, it's shot against beautiful scenery. The Nile, the pyramids, Egypt. It just looks gorgeous. You put some gorgeous actors in there as well, and it just looks great, which this does. I mean, Branagh checks all those boxes. The mystery part of it, I think he does a pretty good job with. Like I said, I don't think it's one of her best mysteries, but it's not bad. It's one of those ones when you see it for the first time, I think you're guessing. And when you're generally surprised by the ending. But I do think that in this case, Branagh took a little bit more license and liberty with the Poirot character. especially adding a sort of a preview at the beginning, a prequel sort of thing, and then a sort of end cap thing. And I didn't appreciate that. I don't think that was in character to what Christie would have wanted. And I didn't think it was necessary. So, and I thought really this was going to be the last one, but apparently, as you said, it's not done well box office wise, but it's done well enough that I think he's doing a third one.
So, really? Oh, wow. Yeah. I hadn't heard that. That's interesting. I'm by the way, mostly on the same page as you. I do want to bring up, since you brought up the older Poirot examples, the guy who did the TV show. What did you say his name was?
David Suchet.
David Suchet. And
I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right either, by the way.
Hey, you win the pronunciation game so far, so I'm going to go with whatever you say. He did something with the character that is really fascinating, because this is a character that, just like Sherlock Holmes or Indiana Jones, or there's not a lot of character development per se over the course of this character's lifetime. There's just these little moments of development, and really the focus is on the mystery. But David Suchet did something with Poirot that I found incredibly fascinating. And that was something that Kenneth Branagh is definitely not doing. And that is that David Suchet seems to understand, and I haven't read a lot of the novels either, so I can't say who gets it right. But he seemed to understand that Hercule Poirot was intended to be a arrogant, sort of almost unlikable character. Like you don't really love him as a character until you're endeared to him as having the personality that he has, for the reasons he has that personality. And then you kind of learn over time what his little weaknesses are, and then you start to sympathize with him a little bit more. Whereas Branagh, I think, brings, even like you just said it, like there's a so for those who haven't seen it, I won't spoil it, but there's like Mike was talking about, there's like a little prequel, but maybe a prologue and an epilogue here. Yep. And it's purely for the intended purpose of you sympathizing with Poirot and wanting to like him a little better. But what's interesting is I don't think on the TV show they ever went that direction. It was kind of like, here's the guy, he's who he is. He's a little bit, you might describe him as like arrogantly OCD, and he wants things to be the way that they are. And if they're not that way, he's upset about it. And Kenneth Branagh is definitely, he has elements of that here, I think, but it's not the same as the TV show did it. And I am in agreement with you that I don't think I've seen the 1978. If I have seen it, it hasn't been in a really long time, but I did not love this particular movie. I'm just going to repeat some of the really good things you said. Beautiful cinematography, gorgeous people, great locations. However, I do think that we're going to talk about this in a minute, because I have another question for you that I think relates to this more, but I really did think the story got convoluted. Now, whodunits can get really convoluted, but here it gets especially convoluted in some ways. And I think that there are some deviations from the novel based on what I was reading about that make it even more convoluted. It's almost like they said, let's take some elements that we're dealing with in the modern day in 2022 and kind of like weave those into this story, which I don't have a problem with, but I don't know that they were weaved in all that well. Right. Yeah, exactly. And then I also think, and I want to get your take on this, I think they actually miscast quite a few of the roles. I mean, gorgeous people, phenomenal actors, but in some of the roles that they were playing, it felt like, so I'll just give you one example. Gal Gadot plays the lead here. And I think that there is, again, without spoiling it, I think that there is some ways in which you're kind of not supposed to like her, but I feel like it's almost impossible not to like Gal. Like it's like, I mean, how do you not like her? I mean, it's right. Almost like difficult to not like her. So how did you feel about some of the casting choices?
Yeah, you know what? I don't think I minded them as much, but okay. I will say yes. Gal does bring, but I mean the way it's written too. I mean, it's not just her. I mean, I'm sure she's more than capable of playing someone unlikable.
That's a good point.
Like because I'm sure there's a lot of folks that don't like her.
Yeah.
And for real. So I think that would be possible, but I recently rewatched the David Suchet version, and I was very surprised because it's been a while since I've seen it. But I was very surprised to see that character is played by Emily Blunt in that version,
Wow.
and I will say that I do like that character more, not as a likable person, but as a more interesting character, and developed a bit more, and I thought that was pretty good. Yeah, she's one of the, I think that was before she was a name as well. So
Sure. Yeah.
and that's the fun part about watching a lot of that show, because there's a lot of English actors in particular that were doing it. That was their TV job before they got big in movies and whatnot. So
Yeah, that's awesome.
and so yeah, she's in that as well. But yeah, I can't remember who it is in the Ustinov version as well. But yeah, there were I didn't think actually anybody in the cast like didn't do a great job. I thought everybody was pretty good. I did find it odd that oh man, now I'm blanking on his name, but there's one guy who's known for usually playing wild characters.
Oh yeah, Russell Brand.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And he was totally not.
I know.
And I was like, wow, that, like, it took me a while. I'm like, could it be? No, it's too late. Like that's too reserved for him. But so I give him credit because I totally believed him as that.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, I felt like every single actor involved had the ability to be stretched a little further than they were maybe stretched. But then again, maybe that was just me. Maybe I wasn't connecting with the plot as much, and so it felt that way to me, responding to how they were acting. But any other thoughts about that before we talk about whodunits in general? Because I want to talk about, I think both of us have said this is not the best whodunit that we've ever seen.
Right.
I would probably put it like at a 4 out of 10. Like it's
Woo.
I have a hard time even recommending it personally.
Wow.
I don't know, but give me your final thoughts.
I would go a little bit higher than that.
Okay.
I would probably go like more of a 6 or 7. But I do think part of the problem that you might have felt with it as well, and I think part of what Kenneth Branagh did, especially with the the scenes, the preview scene in the beginning, the prequel scene sort of, and then the epilogue at the end. He has Poirot go through a story arc here, character arc, and as you mentioned, these stories, when they're done really well, they're not about the main character. They're not. I mean, he's there to impress us, and he's our eyes into. Well, he's a little bit more. He should be more intelligent. He's just like Sherlock Holmes, or heck, an episode of Law and Order. We're there to see the crime and how things go down. Over time, you will learn about these characters, right, because you get little bits here and there, but it's not about them. And I think Branagh made this movie a little bit more about him, his character, and I think that took away from the mystery.
Yeah, I totally agree. Now, I would have said that 2 recent examples that I really liked of whodunits, before we start to break down like what makes a good whodunit, I thought that Knives Out was extraordinarily well done.
Excellent.
Yeah,
well done.
Excellent movie.
Probably one of the best in a long time.
Totally agree. And then I also thought that Murder on the Orient Express was quite a bit better, because I would have probably put that one up in the 8 out of 10 range. Like that was. And I do think that this movie the Death on the Nile suffers a little bit from like there are a couple of pacing issues. Like once we move beyond the prologue, there are some location shifts that feel like they are meant to like give us a really pretty location, which they are. They're phenomenal. But then like move us through that in ways that you're like, okay, so now everybody's getting on the same boat. Like why are we doing that? Like, and it moves kind of fast through some of those kinds of things.
Sure.
And I realized that that's probably inherent in that story, because they have to kind of go from like, we've introduced you to these people, now they're here because we need them to be here. It's like, and so it kind of goes a little fast and probably easier to do in the novel. So yeah, I just thought it was a little odd in that regard. But again, if you want to see a beautiful movie with beautiful people, you can't go wrong. I mean, that's what you're gonna get.
With a little bit of murder.
With a little bit of murder mixed in.